and it tends to happen with all tax cuts, unfortunately, which is that the very low tended to get benefit from that, and the very high tend to get benefit from that, and people in the middle often ended up about the same. And at the end of the day, it's sort of where I ended up, right? Which is that, but what I found was, for example, initially our taxes actually went up because one of the things that they did with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was elimination of the full deduction for state and local tax. You heard me talk about this previously, as well as expanding the standard deduction and removing the personal exemptions. So individuals who itemized a lot and also may have had a number of dependents, they actually may have been worse off. But one of the things that they did in that act was to add the qualified business interest credit, which helped a lot of individuals who were self-employed or small business owners and so on. So for example, using myself as example, we lost the ability to itemize and the personal exemptions, but the qualified business interest deduction, at the end of the day, our taxes were essentially the same. So what's my point in this? My point is that, yes?
One question. When they changed the tax, didn't they just change the withholding for the tax and ultimately you had to pay it anyway?
I'm not sure what you mean by change withholding.
Like they were taking X percentage of your paycheck out for tax.
Okay.
And they changed it, lowered that percentage, but still made you liable for the same amount. They just didn't take that much out of your paycheck.
Well, what is taken out or not taken out is almost a function of your decision, whether you're self-employed or W-2. If you're self-employed, you basically decide your withholding by your quarterly payments. If you're W-2, you can change that any time by filling out what's known as a W-4 form.
If you didn't change anything.
Yeah. So that has nothing to do with what you actually pay, and that's one of the things I sometimes will explain to people. I'll meet people and say, "Oh, how are you doing on taxes?" "I'm doing great. I got $5,000 back last year." So I would say to them, "Well, you also, your tax liability was $20,000. So would you rather pay $20,000 and get $5,000 back at the end of the day, or would you rather pay $17,000 and owe $2,000? Right? I'd rather pay $17,000 and owe $2,000. Whether you get money back or pay is really more of a function of what you have taken out of your check than what you ultimately owe. What that tax law did, though, is, which is why, to your point regarding the having less taken out of your pay, is that the marginal tax brackets and rates were lower, right? So, for example, they expanded the 0% bracket. They expanded the 12% bracket. Okay, it used to be a lot of the lower taxpayers were in the 15% bracket. So they also lowered the higher end bracket where it used to be 39.6%, where the highest now is 37%. So those taxes were lower. Now, having said that, if you lost certain deductions and so on, that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily pay a lot less.
I guess the scenario I'm mentioning is just someone said, I didn't do anything. This bill passed. I made more in my paycheck. At the end of the year, I owed $3,000 more than I thought I would. I wasn't prepared.